Subcommittee 1. I would like to welcome...
Can I just interrupt? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble getting it to start recording.
Okay.
It has started now.
Hooray. Okay, let's start again. Good morning, everyone. My name is Councillor Debs Edwards, and I'm the chair of the Licensing Application Subcommittee 1. I would like to welcome you to the... yes? Sorry, did somebody say something, Chair? No? Right, okay. I'll start that paragraph again. I would like to welcome you to the Licensing Application Subcommittee 1, which is being held as a public online meeting. The purpose of the meeting is to consider an application for the review of a premise licence for Oxford Food and Wine, Oxford Road, Reading. With social distancing still in place, councillors are meeting on this video conferencing platform instead of meeting in person at the civic offices. The Licensing Act 2003 and the Coronavirus Act 2020 has allowed the licensing committees to be conducted online and attended remotely by members, officers and all relevant parties. This meeting is being recorded and may be available on the Council's website. Agenda papers have been published on the Council's website in accordance with our usual practice. To help me manage the meeting, when you are not speaking, please put your microphone on mute. When you are called to speak, please unmute your microphone, pause for about 3 seconds to allow for the slight delay in connection. I would like to advise any members of the public press that they are not able to contribute to the meeting and should mute their microphones. I am aware that we are at the mercy of individuals' broadband services, and it is possible that loss of connection may happen. However, as long as we have 2 members still in the meeting, we will be quorate. However, also, in the event the subcommittee only has 2 rather than 3 members present, the intention of leaving the quorum at 2 is to enable a decision to be taken to adjourn the meeting to a later date and a time and date when a 3rd member can be present. I will now undertake introductions. As previously stated, I am Councillor Debs Edwards, Chair of the Licensing Committee. I will now call on other members of the committee to introduce themselves. Can you say your name, please, and could you introduce yourself to the meeting? Councillor Jenny Rynn. Councillor Rynn, are you there?
Oh, sorry, yeah, I couldn't unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Councillor Jenny Rynn of Kentwood Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Jeanette Skeets.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor Jeanette Skeets, Councillor for Thames Ward.
I would like to introduce you to the officers who are in attendance. Mr. Dan Fundray.
Hi, it's Dan Fundry. I'm a licensing officer with Reading Borough Council and the administrator of the report.
Thank you. Mr. Robert Smalley.
Yep, good morning, Chair. Robert Smalley, Reading Borough Council Licensing Enforcement.
Ms. Wendy Batterson.
You're muted, Wendy.
Sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Wendy Battison and I'm the legal advisor to the panel this morning. I will be present during the meeting, but I will be off camera and on mute unless I need to say anything.
Thank you. And Ms. Julie Quamby.
Good morning, I'm Julie Quamby. I'm committee administrator. Like Wendy, I will be on mute and off camera for most of the meeting unless I'm needed for any procedural advice.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to turn to agenda item 1 of the agenda, declarations of interest under the Council's Code of Conduct. Do any members have any declarations of interest which they wish to bring to the attention of the committee? Councillor Skeets.
Not to my knowledge, Chair.
Councillor Rynn.
Nothing. Thank you, Chair.
And neither do I. Now we'll go to item 2 of the agenda, and that is to confirm the minutes of the meetings of the Licensing Application Subcommittee 2 held on the 8th and the 22nd of December as correct records. Members, can you confirm the minutes are correct of these meetings?
Chair, I wasn't in attendance, but so I find it difficult to agree. Okay, but I don't disagree.
You don't disagree. Okay, Councillor Wren.
Yes, I agree. I was there.
Yes, I was there. I agree too. Right, now item agenda 3, which is the applications for the review of a premise licence, Oxford Food and Wine, Oxford Road, Reading. The application for the review of the licence has been submitted by Thames Valley Police, and I understand that PC Simon Wheeler for Thames Valley Police will address the subcommittee on their behalf. I understand that the representations were received by Reading Borough Council licensing team, and that Robert Smalley, licensing officer, will address the subcommittee on their behalf. The premise licence holder, Mr. Sinai, have I pronounced your name correct, Mr. Sinai?
Dinesh Sanaya.
Sania.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and I do apologise. Mr. Sania is present and is being represented by Mr. Richard Hanstock of Greater London Solicitors Limited. I understand that Mr. Hanstock will address the subcommittee on behalf of Mr. Sania. Please could I ask Mr. Sania and Mr. Hanstock to introduce themselves and confirm if they have anybody else attending them.
Chair, before we start, may I just ask a question, please, just for clarification and guidance? And I'm sorry to interrupt at this stage, but I would rather get it out the way now so I know where we're all going. In our pack of information, the report, there is blue paper.
Yes. Yes,
now,
I was going to, sorry to interrupt you, Councillor, but that was coming up to, on the next, my next.
Okay, apologies. Okay.
No, that's right. No, it hadn't been forgotten. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So if I could ask Mr. Sania and Mr. Hanstock to introduce themselves and to confirm that if there's anybody else attending with them. Mr. Hanstock.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Mr. Hanstock. I'm representing Mr. Sania. To my knowledge, it's just Mr. Sania who'll be attending. Perhaps he'll correct me if I'm wrong. Just to say, I'm instructed by Greater London Solicitors, but I'm from Cornerstone Barristers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sinai, can you confirm that you have nobody else representing yourself?
Good morning, everyone. On myself, representing by my solicitor anyway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to just, as Councillor Wren has brought up the subject of the blue papers, we do have blue papers within our pack. These will not be discussed in as part of the public meeting. If there's a necessity to discuss anything that they hold, we will leave the public meeting and go to a private meeting to consider what has been raised within those papers. Is that quite clear with everybody?
Yes.
Can you show a hand and say yes?
Yeah. Yes, agree.
Agree.
Sorry, could I just clarify that when we talk about blue papers, these are confidential papers that are not being made public under the relevant paragraphs of the legislation.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
In this case, it's because it could lead to identification of a third party.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
And because of that, I'm aware the press are here. So anything that's confidential matter, as you've highlighted, to be done in private session. So thank you for that clarification.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Right. I'm now going to explain the procedure for hearing this application. Firstly, I will ask Mr. Fundry, licensing officer, to provide a brief summary of the report and to highlight any matters that are relevant to the subcommittee's consideration. I will then ask PC Simon Wheeler from Thames Valley Police to address the subcommittee and respond to any questions. As Reading Borough Council's licensing team have made representations, I will then ask Robert Smalley, licensing officer, to address the subcommittee and respond to any questions. I believe we have a barrister who is representing from, is it 3RB Law, who will be representing Thames Valley Police. Would you like
Madam,
to?
good morning. My name's Saba Naqshbandi. I will in fact be making the presentation, not Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you very much, just for clarification. Thank you. Then I will ask the premise license holder, a representative, obviously, of the premise license holder, Mr. Handstock, who will then be asked to address the subcommittee on the application and respond to any questions. Excuse me, this is terribly formal, and it should be, but I'm keeping to the script. I'm trying not to go off script, so I do apologise if this is taking rather a bit of time at the beginning of this meeting. Please note that each party will have 5 minutes to make the representations. Members have read the paperwork submitted, including the late submissions that we received. After all parties have had an opportunity to speak and the questions have been asked, I will ask parties for a brief closing remarks. At that stage, parties must not introduce any new information. I will then ask everyone to leave this meeting link. Members of the subcommittee will then consider the application in private by means of a separate online Microsoft Teams meeting, the meeting link 2, with assistance of the solicitor and committee services officer. Once the subcommittee's deliberations have been completed, Julie Quarmby will email participants, inviting them to join meeting link 2. The meeting will then resume in public when the chair has announced the subcommittee's decision. Please make sure you are contactable and be ready to join meeting link 2 at short notice. If you do not wish to attend the meeting to hear the outcome, can you please let us know now? I take that as that you will be. Once everyone is back in the meeting, I will ask Julie Quarmby to start the recording, and I will then announce the subcommittee's decision. The summary decision will be sent by email later on today to the applicant, the license holder, his representative, and anyone else who notifies the committee administrator that they would like to receive a copy of the summary decision. Notification in writing of the full decision with reasons will follow in 5 working days. Do parties have any questions about the process before we begin?
Just one, if I may, and that's that Mr. Sinara is obviously here to answer any questions that members might have for him. So whilst I propose to take up those 5 minutes, if members do have any questions, he's here to answer them directly.
Thank you, Mr. Handstock, and if we'll bear that in mind, and thank you for letting us know. Right, I will now invite Licensing Officer Mr. Fundry to give a brief outline of this application.
Good morning, Chair. I guess everyone can hear me. Chair, we're here in respect of a review of a premises licence for Oxford Food and Wine at 512 Oxford Road, Reading, which has been brought by Thames Valley Police to address failures identified of the premise licence holder to promote the licensing objectives. The grounds of the review are shown at page 19 of the report. The full application starts at page 25, and the current premises licence is shown at page 72. During the 28-day consultation period, which ended on the 24th of February 2021, a representation was received from Robert Smalley of Reading Borough Council licensing team, which is shown at page 57. Chair, I understand that additional information from Thames Valley Police was submitted early last week and circulated to all parties regarding CCTV footage, and documents in support of the premise licence holder, Mr. Sinia, were submitted late yesterday. Chair, due to the very late submission of these documents, are they permitted in this hearing, or is a small adjournment required? And I can also confirm that no exceptional circumstances were given for the late submission as per our protocol. I do not have anything else to add to this report.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Fundry. Can I speak to the councillors? Councillor Rinn, do you need to have an adjournment to read these late papers? Councillor Rinn?
Sorry.
Sorry.
No, I've already read them, so I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, Councillor Skeets. Can you unmute, please, Councillor?
Sorry, apologies. Whilst I mean, I have also read them. So, and whilst I don't like things being sent at the last minute, I have no problem with your permission, Chair, with considering. I'll take them into consideration. But I have read them, so
Yes.
quite happy with them. Okay.
Quite happy with them. Could I have the representative for TVP? Are you happy that we carry forward, or do you need to have an adjournment?
Madam, we echo Councillor Skeets' comments that it's obviously would have been helpful if they'd been served and submitted with sufficient time. In fact, they reached me this morning, but I've had an opportunity to read them and have had an opportunity to take instructions, and we're content to proceed on the basis that you take them into consideration.
Right, so we can take them into consideration. We're all in agreement, and I echo what Councillor Skeets says. Lateness doesn't help at all. So we will carry on. We don't need an adjournment. Thank you very much for everybody being so flexible. Right, let me move forward now. I'm going to ask the representative for the Thames Valley Police, their barrister, to address the subcommittee on this application, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Madam, I'm going to proceed on the basis that yourself and your colleagues have fully read the papers and have had an opportunity to fully view the CCTV. As you know, the application is brought by Thames Valley Police. We have today Police Constable Simon Wheeler and also Declan Smith, Police Licensing Officers. If you have any particular questions, they are here to assist. The application is essentially made on the basis that the licensing objective of the prevention of crime and disorder has not been upheld by the premises licence holder and DPS, one in the same person at these premises. Although, Madam, you will note that all 3 licensing objectives have been ticked as being relevant. The submissions in support are set out in detail at page 28 and following of the licensing subcommittee documents. As the licensing subcommittee may be aware, the area in which these premises are situated suffers high levels of antisocial behaviour, including street drinking. It is a real problem in the area, and one that the police resources are required to address, and for which there is ongoing investigation. As per the representations from Reading Borough Council, who support the application for review, and I refer you to page 58, they say this: handling stolen goods is a criminal offence. The crimes committed in pursuit of obtaining goods to sell the premises, such as the above, and then any further crimes committed with the proceeds of these actions, can result in an increase in overall crime in both Reading Town Centre and Oxford Road. The handling of stolen goods is a vital link in this chain of criminality, one that, if broken, causes the illegal chain of events to collapse. And we agree with those sentiments expressed by the council. The facts, if I may, in brief, Madam. Intelligence led police to Mr. Sinaya's shop, where on the 11th of January of this year, 84 stolen bottles of alcohol were found in the rear stockroom. And Madam, you'll see those photographs at page 48 onwards. Some still had the security tags attached. Some were labelled as Marks and Spencer products. Some had foil over the top of them, and those are very clearly visible, openly displayed in the stockroom. Also found in the same area was a bag containing removed security tags. CCTV was seized, and for the period of the 16th of December to the date of Mr. Sanaya's arrest, almost 4 weeks, on 11 occasions, the 84 bottles of alcohol were purchased. They were seen to be purchased from a known shoplifter, a drug user. It is clear from the CCTV, Madam, in our submission, that all staff were involved, and that's more than one person, including members of Mr. Sanaya's family. It is clear that they were plainly aware that they were buying stolen goods. The tags were on, they had to be removed before they were sold on. A bag of removed tags was found in the stockroom, which was an open outbuilding, and you'll have seen that in the CCTV and also at page 47 of the photographs. All staff had access. There was no attempt by Mr. Sanaya, for example, to hide his receipt of stolen goods from all of those who worked there. I say that because in his submission submitted yesterday, he essentially says, at paragraph 17, I would like to confirm I am the only one who is fully responsible for this, and I can confirm that my staff and my wife do not have any involvement in this. In our submission, that's plainly wrong on the evidence before you. Mr. Sanaya, as I say, is both the DPS and the premises licence holder. He was arrested and he was interviewed, and you have the documents before you. But essentially, he accepts that he stole goods from a person, and he did so, as he says, in his own submission to you, because they were cheap. Madam, we say that in Mr. Sanaya's statement that's been submitted yesterday, he says at paragraph 5, I take full responsibility. The alcohol was either sold from the shop or kept for personal consumption. But you'll then also see at paragraph 9, he says, although I bought this alcohol for my personal use, I understand my action of buying this stolen alcohol will only support other crimes. And again, we say, Madam, that's contradictory internally in his own statement. It is clear in our submission from what Mr. Sanaya said at the time to the police that he was buying stolen goods because it was cheap, and cheap to sell on to other people within the community. He was issued with a conditional caution. He has complied with one aspect of that in terms of a victim awareness court. And no apology letter has been made to Mark Spencer yet, which was one aspect of the conditional caution. You may think, Madam, that's not a difficult thing for him to do. It's been promised but hasn't been received. And it's now been 2 months or more since the time he was arrested. You will be familiar with, you will be very familiar, Madam, with the principles involved. I'm not going to repeat those to you, but in our submission, there's 2 aspects of this that are really important. One is the council's own inspections demonstrate that whilst it's not relevant to the offending the police is concerned with, they show the attitude of this premises licence holder in upholding the licensing objectives. He didn't even know when he was asked what the licensing objectives are, what they are. There are numerous multiple breaches on over a period of time of basic licensing requirements. This is not someone in our submission who is conversant or willing to support the licensing objectives properly as you would expect. The police don't bring, I'm grateful, the police don't bring revocation lightly. You will have seen in our submission that all other options have been considered. Removal of the DPS as suggested by Reading Borough Council doesn't deal with the issue here because the premises licence holder, the person who has directed this criminality, is the premises, is also the DPS. He and his wife live next door. This is a small business. It's not a large-scale operation where removing a person will remove the problem here. Mr. Senior is central and controlling the staff at the premises. Suspension again in our submission will not address this issue. Madam, we're here to answer questions that you may have, but may I just end in this way? Mr. Senior cites in his statement that the pandemic has affected his business. You may have some sympathy with that. You may have sympathy, no doubt, with all businesses that have been affected in the pandemic. There are, of course, government schemes available to support business, and We note in particular that this is not a business that would not have been permitted to trade throughout most of the last of the year. And in any event, Madam, as I say, many businesses have been affected in the pandemic, but many businesses have continued to uphold the law as they are required to do so. We've also seen the letters that have been provided in support. Just 2 points, if I may. First, you'll have seen the letter from Julian Nichols, who essentially makes the same point, that this business has been open throughout pandemic. And secondly, it's not clear from those statements whether the authors are in fact aware of the offending for which Mr. Senior has accepted by way of a caution. And finally, it's raised by Mr. Senior that the perpetrator, the thief, has not been pursued by the police. He has, in fact, and is due to appear before the court on the 1st of April of this year. Madam, so in all the circumstances, while we accept revocation is a serious step for any committee to take, at the same time, we do say in these circumstances, it is justified and it is proportionate in order to uphold the licensing objectives, in particular, the prevention of crime and disorder. You can have no faith in our submission that Mr. Senior, given his attitude as a premises licence holder, as demonstrated through licensing inspections of the most basic nature, breaches and conditions have not been upheld, to what, on any view when one looks at that CCTV, was blatantly taking stolen alcohol from shops in the area from a known criminal and selling it cheaply at his own premises.
Thank you very much. You did overrun a couple of minutes, but I think it's fair to say that you needed to say what you said. Therefore, I'm going, when I ask Mr. Hanstock to say his piece, I will allow him 9 minutes. Is that okay? Yep. Okay, right. Members, Councillor Rynn, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Not at this stage, thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Skeets?
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that when the inspection took place, I understand, and can you just confirm that Mr. Sanai was actually willing to allow the investigation to take place going into the rear stockroom? And I mean, knowing what was in there, he didn't put up any objections to the police going into that room to have a look.
Madam, you can see from the CCTV that, yes, the police were able to go. You can also see that he was told straight away what the concerns were for the police. So on any view, it would have been obvious to him in our submission that the police were aware of what was going on at the business.
Yes, I asked that.
It is correct. It is correct that he cooperated with the police taking the CCTV and also going into the stockroom.
Thank you. I asked that question because not everyone has had view of the CCTV, and so they may, it needs to also come in dialogue.
I wasn't aware of that, Madam. I'd asked at the beginning to confirm that all councillors have had an opportunity to view the CCTV as part of our case.
Yeah.
Sorry, by that, we have. And I said,
I'm grateful.
Yeah, if you just listen for a moment, what I'm saying is people that are reporting on this haven't seen that. So it's just for clarification as to this hearing. So that's why I raise it, just so that everyone is aware that the applicant did cooperate. So that needs to come out in dialogue as well. Yes, just for the record, to be clear, we who are sitting here today have had in our possession the CCTV footage. We've looked at it, but it's for those people that maybe are reporting on it, just so there's no confusion. Okay, thank you.
My apologies, and I'm grateful, Madam. Thank you.
Yes, we have. Right. Are there any questions from parties? I will call each person in turn. Mr. Smalley. Mr. Smalley, you are muted.
Yeah, no questions, Chair.
No questions. Right. Mr. Hanstock for the licence holder.
I'm grateful. I have no questions for Ms. Naqshbandi.
You have no questions. Right. Thank you. Now I'm going to invite Mr. Smalley to address the subcommittee on the application.
Yeah, thank you. Can
you can have 8 minutes too.
Can you hear me? Everyone okay? Because my computer's gone wrong slow. Okay, that's fine. Okay, everyone's moving in slow motion for me. Right, okay. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, Reading Borough Council's licensing department, acting as a responsible authority, agree with Thames Valley Police's decision to review the premises licence for Oxford Road Oxford Food and Wines in order to address the criminality at this premises, and in turn for members of this committee to make a determination that will prevent future undermining of the licensing objectives. It is hoped that via this committee process, the premises licence holder will be able to look very carefully at the gravity of his actions and understand that such behaviour is what has resulted in him being here today, and that he must ensure that no offences occur in the future. As members may well know, Oxford Road and its surrounding area suffer from high levels of crime and antisocial behaviour. The handling of stolen goods is one such crime and is listed in section 22, paragraph 1 of the Theft Act 1968. This offence causes, as previously mentioned, a cascade effect in criminality, for example, supporting drug users within their habits and leading to further perpetration of thefts in order to sell the stolen goods to premises such as Oxford Food and Wines. The crimes committed both before and after this offence result in an increase in overall crime in both Reading Town Centre and Oxford Road. The offence of handling stolen goods is a vital link in this chain of criminality that, if broken, causes the illegal chain of events to collapse. Mr. Senior has been the licence holder since May 2019. During this time, his time as licence holder, 3 licensing inspections have been conducted by licensing officers from Reading Borough Council. 2 of these inspections highlighted areas of non-compliance as detailed on pages 67 to 70 of the bundle. The first of these inspections was conducted on the 7th of August 2020 and identified 4 breaches, including no Section 57 notice, no authorisation of staff for the sale of alcohol, no age verification being implemented, and no notices being displayed requesting customers to leave quietly. Another inspection was conducted on the 12th of January 2021. This inspection also found 4 breaches, including no Part B of the licence on display at the premises, failure of the DPS to produce his personal licence as per section 135 of the Licensing Act, failure to keep the premises tidy and provide waste bins, and a lack of signage explaining to customers that it is illegal to purchase or attempt to purchase alcohol under the age of 18. During this second inspection, it was noted during the second inspection, it was noted that no fire risk assessment had been completed. Links to guidance on how to complete such a risk assessment were provided to the licence holder following the visit, and then a follow-up visit to this one was took place on the 11th of February 2021, and during this visit it was noted that all issues had been rectified other than the fire risk assessment, which to my knowledge is still not complete, and it was also noted that Mr. Senior's personal licence still listed his previous address in Harrow. The above premises is now broadly compliant with the conditions on its premises licence and has also implemented recommended good practices in the form of a refusal register and an incident book. It is noted that the conditions on this premises licence are not as robust as would typically be found on a newer convenience store premises licence on Oxford Road. We believe the conditions included on pages 62 to 64 of the bundle would better assist the premises licence holder in promoting the licensing objectives and to maintain the new due diligence practices started at the premises following the most recent visit, as well as helping to raise the bar of shops down the Oxford Road in general following the positive work in the area over the past few months. Reading Borough Council licensing appreciates the serious nature of the offence of handling stolen goods that has been committed at this premises and the negative impact such offences have on those businesses that the goods are stolen from. It is also understood that the proceeds of such crimes can be used to support further criminality. However, taking into account the compliance now at the premises and the premises licence holder's receptiveness to improving standards at the premises, we believe it prudent to allow him to keep the premises licence. And if this is what members are minded to do, we respectfully ask for the following measures to be applied. The suspension of the premises licence. We believe that this will allow the premises licence holder at adequate time to source a new DPS and implement the conditions we are requesting. We appreciate that the length of suspension is to be decided by members. However, we would recommend the maximum 3 months in this instance. The removal of Mr. Senior as DPS, And again, we appreciate that there may be concern with this recommendation due to Mr. Senior remaining as the premises licence holder. However, our intention with this recommendation is that if members have faith that Mr. Senior can source a reputable, experienced DPS, that this will breathe new life into the store in terms of staff training, best practices, due diligence procedures, etc. Any reputable DPS obviously would not allow themselves to be involved with such criminality going forward. And finally, the removal of the current conditions on the licence to be replaced with those listed on pages 62 to 64. And as previously explained, it is believed that these conditions will form a solid foundation for the premises licence holder to work on to maintain compliance and good practices. That is all from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smalley. Members, have you any questions for Mr. Smalley? Councillor Wren.
No, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Skeets.
Yes, I do, Chair. Mr. Smalley, I wrote this down as you were saying it. You realise the negative impact on other premises. However, you think it's prudent to allow him to continue with his licence. Why? If you've recognised the negative impact on other premises where the property has been stolen from, why, in your opinion, is it prudent to allow him to continue with his licence? I mean, clearly he's admitted and taken responsibility for his actions. So can you just enlighten us on your rationale for that, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Obviously, this hearing here today is not a punishment hearing for a crime that has been committed. Obviously, it's been admitted, and the criminal process is separate to that of the licensing function. So obviously, this is just the saying that if with closer scrutiny and with those powers applied by members, that we believe that no further offences or no further undermining of the licensing objectives will occur. And that is what we are saying to you. Obviously, ultimately, it's your decision as to whether or not you have faith in his morals and character going forward. But we're saying that with those powers applied, that is what will prevent further undermining. The fact that it has been stolen and there has been, the effects felt by the businesses has obviously happened, and that's in the past for now. So yeah, that's my answer to that one.
Councillor Skeets, do you wish to respond?
I just to say that I wasn't even suggesting punishment. I was asking for your rationale as to why you would suggest that. Punishment was not even mentioned in my question to you. I just wanted to know why you would say that, almost in an advisory way to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions for one question really for clarification from Mr. Smalley. So as from what I took down as you were speaking, there is no apology to Marks and Spencer's. The fire risk assessment hasn't been done, and the old licence is on display. Is this still relevant? Is this still true?
So, from my last inspection, the premises licence was all in order, and the correct parts were on display, and all paperwork was on display. But if the fire risk assessment has been done since that inspection in February, it hasn't been forwarded to me as per my request to Mr. Senior. Yeah, that's my answer to that one.
So you don't know if the apology to Marks and Spencer's has actually been sent or done or sent?
No, and I wouldn't be necessarily directly involved with hearing that. I haven't chased that up myself, no, and I haven't heard of that, no. And obviously, following TVP's council comments, I believe it hasn't been done.
Right, okay. No, it's just that you said it was broadly compliant, and I wanted to know how broadly was broadly. Thank you very much for that. Yeah. Could I now, if there's any questions, are there any questions from other parties? I will call each in turn. I will call, first of all, the barrister for Thames Valley Police.
No, thank you, Madam.
And Mr. Handstock.
Thank you, no questions.
No questions. Right, I'm now going to invite Mr. Handstock to, on behalf of Mr. Sinai, to address the subcommittee on the application. You have 8 minutes as well, Mr. Handstock. Okay.
Thank you, Madam. As you know, it's my privilege to represent the licensee in this hearing, a hearing which he recognises, but it's obvious that the future of his fledgling business hangs in the balance, all as a consequence of a serious error of judgment on his part. As I have said at the outset, he is here to answer any questions that might arise from members for him. It is not my objective with my 8 minutes to seek to minimise the seriousness of this offence. Stolen alcohol has been purchased unlawfully on licensed premises in a way that encourages crime by creating a cash market for stolen goods. Plainly, the crime and disorder objective is engaged, and plainly, members will wish to send a strong deterrent message to other licensed premises in the area who might face the same temptation from the same supplier, though of course we hear he's now being dealt with by the police in his own right. Plainly, revocation is on the table for all the reasons articulated by Ms Naqshbandi for the police. My ambition today is to persuade members of this subcommittee that the appropriate and proportionate step is that recommended by Mr Smalley, your colleague in the licensing authority itself. That is to allow the premises one final opportunity with strong control measures in place and new management after a period of suspension. Now, that combination of measures, I suggest, in partnership with Mr Smalley, would achieve all of the objectives that the police and the licensing authority share, namely the promotion of the prevention of crime and disorder, whilst also recognising the cooperation and candour shown by Mr Sinaya, in which I suggest you can safely root confidence in him to have learned from the error of his ways. I have 3 points to make in support of that ambition. The first is one that I know this committee appreciates, and that it goes to the nature of your discretion, and it is a discretion. Licensing decisions, as has been said, are not punitive in character. We're not here to pass sentence on Mr Sinaya, that is the role of the criminal process. We are here, of course, to determine what is appropriate and proportionate in the interests of the local community. And the police, I suggest, faced a similar option. They had before them all the evidence seized from the stockroom to which Mr Sinaya showed the police when they arrived, the CCTV provided by Mr Sinaya, and an admission of guilt from Mr Sinaya in interview. He took full responsibility. The police had a choice to charge Mr Sinaya, bring him before a criminal court and have him face the justice of local magistrates, or to offer him a conditional caution, a diversion from the criminal justice system if he completes a rehabilitation course and agrees not to reoffend within a period of time. And that's the course that they chose. Mr Sinaya accepted that opportunity and he is, I was going to say entirely, but I think largely compliant with the requirements of that caution. It may be that in ordinary circumstances I'll be able to take instructions from him now on the apology letter and so on, but perhaps we can return to that in questions. More than that, he's taken from the course that he did complete and pay for valuable lessons that he has in his witness statement that I'm grateful to the committee for considering out of time. Valuable lessons outlined at paragraphs 9 to 11, forgive me, of that witness statement. Now, that caution forms part of the proposal effectively that would continue to hang over him in the event that this subcommittee were to accept Mr Smalley's proposal. So the caution and the conditions together regarding approved suppliers of alcohol and so on, they all raise the consequences to Mr Sinaya, both to him and to his business, in the highly unlikely event, I suggest, that history was to repeat itself. Now, it's been suggested by Ms Naqshbandi for the police that a new DPS wouldn't change anything. This is a small business, and in response I adopt entirely the point made by Mr Smalley for the licensing authority. Bringing a new person into this operation would help to professionalise it, which is exactly what it needs. It's not of no value. It's a sense of accountability to another person brought in from the outside whose job is to ensure the business complies with its licensing obligations. What better step, I suggest, to help to ensure that those controls that we've talked about are effective going forward. The second of my three submissions is effectively a question. What does this offence tell you about Mr. Sinaya as a licensee? His behaviour is inexcusable and he does not seek to excuse himself. I say you can find confidence in his responsible approach to running the premises in the future, not solely on the offence he's committed, but on what he did before and after this offence came to light. Prior to the offence, he was running a broadly compliant operation. We can talk about how broad is broad, but in essence, we see at page 61 of the papers available to members, the assessment of the responsible authority is a, quote, good level of compliance. Not perfect, I accept, but good enough to give the authority confidence that Mr. Sinaya will continue to work with them in partnership in the interests of local people. From the moment of the police visit, he cooperated. He did not obstruct the police who came to inspect. He provided them with the CCTV. He invited them to have unsupervised access to the stockroom. Now, police powers aside, he fully admitted the offences. In interview, he sought to provide what details he could of the person from whom he bought the alcohol, and it seems that that, together with the CCTV, has no doubt formed part of the case for the police against that individual. He accepts that what he has done was wrong and he apologises for his mistake. You've seen his witness statement in paragraph 6 in particular. That apology is hammered home. What more, I ask hypothetically, could someone who had committed this offence realistically do to reassure the authority and local people who are watching that his business deserves a second chance? And my third and final submission centres on proportionality. This shop plays a modest but important role in its local community. It's a source of jobs and revenue for the locality. It provides a service to local people in these troubled times. And members, I am sure, will pay careful attention to references submitted from local people enclosed with the witness statement, which I say paint a picture of investment in what was a run-down shop, keeping clean and tidy shelves stocked with items that local people want.
You have 1 minute, Mr.
I'm very grateful. I won't need it all. I quote, a breath of fresh air, says one local resident, delivering food during lockdown, including over Christmas, and donating items to the Salvation Army. This is a time, I respectfully suggest, for us all to come together, a time for second chances, so that this local area can recover from this pandemic together with the jobs that this business creates. The crime and disorder objective absolutely takes priority. I suggest that the alternative to revocation put forward by Mr. Smalley achieves that objective. And if members are persuaded that revocation might not be the only appropriate option, I implore members to support the suspension and the conditions advocated by the licensing authority and to allow Mr. Sinaya one last chance to make good on his promise to continue to operate his business as a responsible licensee going forward. Unless there are any questions, those are my submissions.
Thank you very much for that. Right, any questions from members? Councillor Rynn.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to ask, all the employees within the shop, are they thoroughly being given, excuse me, being given thorough training for what they are expected to do? Particularly on the licensing side.
If I may invite Mr. Sinaya just to comment directly on that in a moment. What I can say without speaking to him is that the witness statement talks about the lessons that he's learned from the course that he's been on being relayed to members of staff, and who of course understand their responsibilities as authorised sellers of alcohol. But if I may turn to Mr. Sinaya to answer that question direct.
Yes.
Mr. Sinaya, what training is given to members of staff who sell alcohol in your shop on their licensing responsibilities?
Prevent the crime, prevent the children, and prevent the community. And I train all my staff about the alcohol selling and about the shop and all the like alcohol, how to sell, like how to check the age verification and everything. I got the staff training book also.
Thank you, and I think it's right, Councillor, that in the event that you were to accede to the submission from Mr. Smalley and myself to replace the DPS, then that person's responsibility would be to review the training going forward and to ensure that staff are in a position to comply with the requirements of the licence going forward.
Councillor, is that okay, Councillor?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Skeets.
Thank you, Chair. All right, Mr. Handstock, there's a couple of things I'd like to ask you, please, on behalf of your client. You said that he's acknowledged that it was a lack of judgment on his part, but it wasn't just one aspect of lack of judgment. This was on several occasions. One might be forgiven had it been just on one occasion, but this was several occasions this took place. So the lack of judgment, would you agree, was a persistent lack of judgment on your client's behalf? It occurred on many occasions.
Councillor, I absolutely agree that there was, I think the police had 11 occasions on reviewing the footage from within the shop where either Mr. Sinai or members of staff on his behalf carried out these problematic transactions, to put it mildly. It was over a period of time. There were more than one occasion and more than one person involved. We can't escape those facts, and Mr. Sinai doesn't seek to hide from them. What he is able to say is that he has reflected on the consequences of his behaviour, including this hearing, including the arrest, the experience of being interviewed. Absolutely, it was more than one occasion. Agreed.
Yeah, I'm coming back, Chair, if I may, on a couple of points, if you'll bear with me. Because you see, it was also flagged up because of the pandemic and how it affected business. But as the barrister for the police said, the pandemic has affected businesses up and down the country. It's not in isolation that your client was affected. And also, it was having a negative effect on the businesses where the shoplifter was stealing from, and he was buying stolen goods. So wouldn't you agree with that? That there was not any moral compass for your client, thinking that this is wrong, I shouldn't be doing it because, this isn't just my business, it's other.
Councillor, you're frozen, unfortunately. Councillor Skeets. Julie.
I will try and get her to join by phone.
Right, okay. And what I'll do then, if you can get us to join again by phone, Councillor Skeets can carry on with her questions. I hope everybody won't mind waiting a minute or two. Okay.
I'm back. I'm back.
Okay, you carry on then, Councillor Skeets.
Councillor in a message.
I just think Councillor Vodafone voice
message again.
Oh, right.
711781. Please leave a message after the tone. When you finish recording, please hang up or press the hash key for more options.
Jenny, are we all?
That's clear. I just got your message and that was all, but I haven't sent one back.
Okay. No. Okay. Apologies. Right, back into official business. Yes, so I think I was at the stage where I was saying that morally what he was doing was wrong. It wasn't him just being affected by this pandemic, it's businesses throughout the country. And you know, he wasn't a standalone person being affected by this. So where was his moral compass? Because he knew, you know, after the first time to continue to do it, which relates to my previous question, every time he was doing it, it was having a negative effect on other businesses where the goods were being stolen from. And also, you know, it's supporting the world of drug addiction on the Oxford Road and perhaps other areas where this person, the shoplifter, was selling goods, and he was giving money. Obviously, he was selling the buying. There was a selling and buying, which was supporting the world of drug addiction. So again, it comes back to that moral compass of, you know, he knew what he was doing. Why did he continue to do it? He knew what he was doing. So why?
Well, Councillor, I think that the person best placed, of course, to answer that question is Mr. Sinai himself, and that's why he's here. And I'll turn to him, if I may, in a moment. I'd just like to amplify, before he does so, the parts of his witness statement where he addresses points relevant to this point. No one is trying to present the pandemic as presenting some moral excuse for this behaviour. Indeed, as Councillor, as you pointed out, the fact that the pandemic was affecting everybody at the time arguably makes this worse in terms of its impact on the businesses from whom the alcohol was stolen. Mr. Sinai has explained in his statement that he feels ashamed to face people in the community. That's at paragraph 12, and it talks about the press attention, local newspaper, social media, indeed this public hearing where he's being asked to explain his actions. He feels the shame that he ought to feel. He acknowledges that what he did was wrong, that it had an impact on others. And he's here to essentially to ask the committee to show him some mercy and give him one final opportunity to turn his business around. If I may turn now, Chair, to Mr. Sinai, just to answer that question, what was it that was in your mind at the time, and how can this committee be confident that you changed your ways?
I'm really sorry to buy those things. It's the only reason I bought it, for the cheap. But I realize it's a big crime. It's a big thing now. It's affecting my life, affecting my career and everything. I'm really sorry for that. I apologize my things. I'm really sorry.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Skeets.
Yeah, I mean, I could be a little bit, I think I'll leave it there because, you know, I hear his apology, but the impact of his actions could have created a lot of difficulties for other people concerned. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Skeets. I'm now going to see if there's any questions from other parties. I'll turn to the barrister for the Thames Valley Police.
No, thank you, Madam.
Thank you. And now I'll turn also to Mr. Smalley. Do you have any questions?
No, Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to ask all the parties to make brief closing remarks. And as I said when we started this subcommittee, this review, that you can't introduce any new information at this stage. So I'm going to call on to the barrister for Thames Valley Police. Can you sum up, please?
Thank you, Madam. Madam, as suggested in the guidance at paragraph 11.20, the police has identified the cause for concern, here being Mr. Sinaya. The police has addressed the remedial action to Mr. Sinaya. It has considered all the steps that you will consider. It has considered the steps that Reading Borough Council suggest. It is suggested by Reading Borough Council and Mr. Sinaya shown to be receptive to improving standards. Those standards in our submission were so basic requirements of licensing that they should have been in place from the outset. They are not still fully complied with, as Mr. Smalley has explained to you today. These were not the odd breach, but a multitude of failings. And that really demonstrates Mr. Sinaya's attitude to licensing from the outset of running this business. Police have taken into account that this is a first offence, a first review, and that revocation is not to be taken lightly. I should correct something I said earlier. I in fact was wrong to say it was 11 occasions. There were in fact 16 occasions over 27 days in which stolen alcohol was blatantly purchased by Mr. Sneyer and staff under his direction. It is suggested today by Mr. Hanstock that Mr. Sneyer has been candid and cooperative. With respect, he hasn't been candid to you, even in his statement yesterday. He suggests at paragraph 17 that he is responsible and his staff and his wife had no involvement. That I'm afraid is not borne out by the evidence in the CCTV that you will have seen in a small shop where the stockroom, the stolen goods were on open display, tags attached in bags. It is inconceivable that his staff were not aware of what was going on. Madam, will removal of Mr. Sneyer as DPS remedy the concerns of the police and uphold the licensing objective of prevention of crime and disorder? The one thing that you have not been addressed on today is who is the alternative being suggested? Who is it? Is this responsible person, experienced person that is going to come in and turn this around? Not a single person has been suggested, and you might have expected if that was a genuine proposal that had merit to address the licensing objective of prevention and crime and disorder, that you would be hearing it today, or indeed the police would have been provided with a name so that they could look into that particular person. No one is suggested. In reality, all that will happen is if you adopt the measures suggested by the council, by the council. Can I just suggest, Madam, that I should continue at this point? Somebody
Yes.
seems to have exited.
Yes.
Is suggested is in our submission, nothing will change in essence. Mr. Sneyer remains a premises licence holder. He remains living next door. It is a small shop. The same staff remain in place, including his wife and family members. What will change? He will essentially be directing the business as he did before. And that is the real concern of the police, and why in our submission, removal of the DPS and suspension will not address the cause of the concerns in this particular case. And as draconian a step as it may be, revocation in our submission is, for this case, justified and proportionate. And Madam, it's for those reasons that we invite the committee to grant the police application and to take the view that revocation is the appropriate step to address and uphold the licensing objectives, particularly the prevention of crime and disorder.
Thank you very much for that. I will now turn to Mr. Smalley for your brief closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just briefly, it's obviously Reading Borough Councils do appreciate that the handling of stolen goods is a serious offence, and this hearing process here is what is appropriate and proportionate determination for you to make. That you will have faith in, therefore, that no further underminings of the licensing objectives will occur. And obviously, just with the point about the DPS, that's the recommendation for 3-month suspension is therefore to not only to ensure that the new conditions that we're asking for are in place and complied with, but also that would be, we believe, an adequate time, given sourcing a new DPS and notice periods they may have to give another job or whatever it may be, to find and install a new DPS there. And obviously the part of the DPS process is that the application goes to the police for them to vet to see if the person obviously has any past or reason as to why they shouldn't be a new DPS at the premises. And that's everything from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. And now I turn to Mr. Hanstock, who's representing the premise licence holder, to sum up as well.
I'm very grateful. The police, of course, are the lead agency on crime and disorder. It's understandable that their default position is one of strong deterrence, and revocation is clearly one of the options to be considered. The police themselves describe it as draconian. On balance, revocation is not the proportionate step in my respectful submission. Now, especially not in circumstances in which officers of the licensing authority carrying out the same balance that the police have carried out in reaching their determination, recommend that Mr. Sinaya is given one more chance. They are willing to work with him. They have seen all the same evidence. It is, of course, a matter for members, but they are willing to work with him to make a success of his business. This is a forward-looking jurisdiction. If Mr. Sinaya was to run his business in a way that did not promote the prevention of crime and disorder, no doubt he would be brought back before this subcommittee or another licensing subcommittee of this authority. Imagine how that authority, knowing the decision made here to give him one more chance, if that is the decision of this subcommittee, imagine how that future subcommittee would regard his prospects. This is a case in which, as recommended by the authority, strong reasons for a suspension and conditions would provide more than adequate control to prevent the future crime and disorder associated with his premises. He's a man of former good character. He's admitted his offending. He feels intense shame and has the constraints of the conditional caution together with the scrutiny of the licensing authority and the new conditions that the authority invite this committee to impose on the licence. That combination of control mechanisms gives confidence, enough confidence, in my respectful submission, for suspension, not revocation, to be the appropriate and proportionate decision here. Those are my submissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, everyone. Thank you for everyone who has contributed to this application. Members have read the papers supplied and listened to the applicant and to the representations made. The subcommittee will now meet in private to consider the evidence and make a decision. Our Committee Services Officer, Julie Quamby, will let you know when to rejoin the meeting to hear the subcommittee's decision. The recording of this part of the proceedings will now stop. I will ask everyone to leave this meeting. Members of the subcommittee and the councillor's solicitor will join the link for the private meeting called Meeting Link 2. For the remaining parties, please leave this meeting. Once we have completed our deliberations, Julie Quamby will email you, inviting you to meet at Meeting Link 2. Thank you very much. Take care.
Could I just ask, Ms. Naqshbandi, do you want me to email you directly? I don't have your email address, or would you like the police to forward it on to you?
I can send it to you, Julie, or equally either Mr. Wheeler or Mr. Smith will be able to contact me.
Okay, that's fine then. But if you want to email me,
I will.
My address is julie.quamby.
I think I've got it on emails already.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.